You've been more of a mother to me than she ever was. Jessica raised her glass to her mother-in-law, Linda, in my house at my dinner table, with my grandson Jamie sitting right there, chewing chicken like nothing had detonated. Her smile was sweet enough to rot teeth. Her words? A scalpel. Liam kept eating like it was just another Thursday. Linda smirked like she'd just been handed a crown. And all eyes turned to me, waiting for the explosion, for the meltdown, for the bitter old woman to finally snap. Instead, I set down my fork, picked up my wine, smiled, then go live with her. Because starting tomorrow, your name's off every bill, and your key won't open these doors. The silence that followed didn't feel victorious. It felt like surgery. Precise. Necessary. They thought I snapped in the moment, but that line? I'd rehearsed it for weeks after I filed the cease and desist, after I gathered screenshots, backed up financial records, and sent notarized letters from Renee's office. They just didn't know that yet. This wasn't rage. It was execution. Jessica blinked. Jamie looked up. Liam rubbed his temple like I was the problem. Linda had the gall to look proud, like a queen watching one daughter outmaneuver the other. Jessica didn't flinch. She tilted her head, calm as ever, like I was a sad interruption to her moment. Liam opened his mouth, probably to offer one of his half-hearted, let's just talk about this, non-answers. I raised my hand. No more. No more. 1 more months. No more quiet negotiations behind closed doors. No more pretending I didn't see what they were doing with my house, my money, my name. They'd turned this home into a stepping stone for her brand. Tonight, I took the stone back. I don't want to go, Jamie said quietly. That cracked something small in me, but I didn't stop. Because they weren't just living here, they were staking claims. And I'd already spent too many nights watching Jessica market my home, like a retreat center, and Liam look the other way. I watched them leave the dining room like they owned it. Jessica's linen blazer catching the soft light like she was on a stage. She'd played her part, said her line, burned her bridge. And I'd already bought the locks. I went upstairs, closed my door, and sat on the bed in silence. 10 months ago, they arrived with boxes and tears, asking for 30 days. Tonight, I ended day 304. Tomorrow, the legal part begins, and for the first time in years, I don't feel powerless. I feel ready. The night they moved in, it was raining so hard, the cardboard boxes sagged at the corners. Jessica stood on my porch holding Jamie, mascara running, hair frizzed, and said the words that would open the gates of hell. We just need a month. Liam followed behind her, soaking wet and silent, like a man who knew better than to make eye contact. I should have known then, but I was still a mother first, and mothers don't turn their children away in the rain. So I helped carry the boxes, cleared out the guest room, washed the extra sheets, heated up the casserole I had in the freezer. Just until we figure things out, Jessica said, spooning food onto a plate like she belonged here. The landlord's wife got diagnosed with lupus, and they're selling the house. Total surprise. It was almost believable. By the second week, I noticed little things. Jamie's toys scattered across my living room. Jessica switching the smart thermostat without asking. Liam not lifting a single finger. But I stayed quiet. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that once they got back on their feet, they'd be gone. Back to their lives, back to their own bills. By summer, Jessica's yoga brand had taken over my Wi-Fi. She'd changed her mailing address to mine and started posting on social media about the incredible energy of her historic Maplewood retreat space, my house. She hosted her first yoga weekend in June, advertised it online as a boutique wellness getaway hosted in a landmark estate passed down through generations. I found that line in her Instagram post while I was sitting in my car, waiting to pick up Jamie from soccer practice. I remember staring at the screen so long the battery died. The thing is, I didn't say anything. Not then. Why? Because I still believed in boundaries, and I assumed they did too. But Jessica treats boundaries like suggestions. Liam doesn't even see them, and Jamie, sweet boy, lives in a house where the rules shift depending on who's getting what they want. By fall, my utility bills had doubled. Packages arrived daily in Jessica's name. Jamie started calling the upstairs guest room Mommy's office. And when I brought it up, Jessica laughed and said, "Well, it kind of is now, right?" No, it wasn't, but I was already losing control, one quiet concession at a time. The month they needed had come and gone, but they stayed, and I let them, because I hadn't yet admitted to myself what they were really doing. They weren't staying out of need. They were settling in. By July, the air had changed in my own home, and not because of the broken AC. Jessica said she'd call someone about 3 weeks in a row. It started small. "I'll get groceries this week," she said, handing me a half-empty receipt and asking for Venmo. The next time? No groceries, just a screenshot of her Venmo request with a winking emoji and, "We're tight this month. Thanks, Mama Claire." Mama Claire. She said it with a laugh, but it felt like a role I'd been assigned, not a person, a service. Then came the credit card. Liam accidentally used my identity to apply for a small business credit line. I found out when the card showed up in my mailbox with my full name and a logo that read Urban Earth Retreats, LLC. When I asked him about it, he rubbed the back of his neck and said, "Oh, it must have auto-filled. I'll cancel it." He never did. That fall, Jessica made a snide comment when I said I still preferred handwritten cards to text messages. "You boomers romanticize useless things," she said, rolling her eyes. Liam chuckled. Jamie looked up from his cereal and said, "What's a boomer?" I didn't say anything, not then. But inside me, something was changing, not cracking, hardening. The final blow came one Thursday afternoon in October. I went to refill a prescription, simple cream for my arthritis, and the pharmacist told me my insurance had flagged suspicious activity. I thought it was fraud. It was, in a way. Jessica had used my medical insurance for a cosmetic facial peel. When I confronted her, she waved her hand like I was being dramatic. "It's just a number," she said. "You weren't using it." That's when I realized. Jessica doesn't ask, she assumes. She assumes she's entitled to my groceries, my utilities, my home, my identity. And when I object, I'm overreacting, bitter, outdated. I went to my room that night, shut the door, and sat on the edge of the bed in the dark. It wasn't sadness I felt, or even anger. It was humiliation. Quiet, hot humiliation, the kind that seeps into your bones when you realize people don't just use you. They see you as something to be used. And they'll keep using you as long as you stay quiet. But I wasn't going to stay quiet much longer. Because Jessica thought she was playing a long game. What she didn't know? I invented the damn game. And starting now, I was done playing by their rules. By the time November rolled around, they weren't even pretending to respect me anymore. That's when I stopped pretending too. They saw gray hair and a quiet kitchen and assumed I was harmless, out of touch, easy to manipulate. They forgot who I used to be. 32 years at Langford and Phelps as a senior forensic accountant. My job wasn't just balancing books. It was exposing fraud, spotting patterns, following trails no one else could see. I testified in court more times than I could count. I've had men 3 times Jessica's intellect break down on the stand when I laid out their hidden accounts and doctored invoices in front of a jury. I made a career out of unmasking people who thought they were clever, people just like her. But here, at home, I'd let them get away with so much because they were family. Because I didn't want to believe they were the kind of people I used to investigate. But now, the evidence was too loud to ignore. Jessica had hijacked my Wi-Fi, moved her business into my house, and started treating it like a brand headquarters. Liam had used my name for a credit line, and I hadn't seen a dime from either of them since August. And Jamie, sweet, observant Jamie, had started calling the spare room Mommy's retreat space. They were embedding. I needed someone to talk to, someone who wouldn't just pat my hand and tell me to set boundaries like it was that simple. So I pulled out my old contacts binder, the black leather one I hadn't touched since retirement, and I flipped to the Sees Cho Renee, She had started as a wide-eyed intern, fresh out of business school. I trained her myself, taught her how to sniff out a shell company by reading a single utilities ledger. She called me the Hawk. Last I'd heard, she made partner. I texted her. One sentence. Renee, it's Claire Maxwell. I need help. Not work. Personal. Her reply came 43 seconds later. Name the place and time. I picked a cafe we used to haunt back when we pulled 12-hour days in the same war room. She was already there when I arrived, sipping espresso and flipping through a folder. I didn't need to say much, just a few receipts, a screenshot, a photocopy of the POA form I'd signed when Liam begged for help during Jamie's birth. Renee looked up. All business. Claire, you're not imagining this. You're the victim of progressive financial coercion. She didn't say abuse. Not yet, but I saw it in her eyes. She knew exactly what was happening. And now, she was in it with me. Renee didn't waste time. We met again 2 days later, not at the cafe this time, but at her downtown office, where the walls were lined with framed degrees and trial commendations. She closed the door and pulled up my file on her monitor like I was any other client. You're not crazy, she said. And you're not alone. What they're doing, it's textbook. Slow erosion of financial boundaries, exploitation of familial trust, leveraging guilt to maintain access. You're the case study they teach in seminars. She said it clinically, like a diagnosis, but her voice held something else too, a sharp edge of anger on my behalf. I felt seen for the first time in months. Tell me everything, she said. So I did. The retreat weekends booked through my address, the utility spikes, the forged credit line, the health insurance abuse, the sudden reappearance of Liam's old springing power of attorney form, the one I'd signed under duress years ago, when I was hospitalized, and he told me it was just a precaution. She took notes as I spoke, her pen flying. When I mentioned Jessica's attempt to label me outdated and resistant to change, Renee snorted. They always go for the age card first. Makes their narrative easier to sell. Caregiver becomes villain. Elder becomes burden. She pulled up a slide deck she'd used at a recent legal conference and showed me something that made my stomach drop. Claire, she said, pointing to the diagram, you're not just being taken advantage of. You're being positioned for financial displacement. That was the term, financial displacement. It sounds clean. But it means being stripped of control, bit by bit, until you're a ghost in your own life, tolerated until you sign one too many checks, and then discarded. That's when we started the list. Not a revenge plot, a legal strategy. We didn't call it getting them out. We called it reclaiming ownership. 3 goals: protect the deed and the estate, collect evidence of willful manipulation, re-establish financial independence. But, Renee said, clicking her pen shut, we also need to be realistic about the costs. What kind of costs? If they push this POA angle in court, even temporarily, you could lose access to your own accounts. I nodded. And if I push too hard, I looked down, I might lose Jamie. We sat in silence a moment. That was the part one hadn't said aloud yet. I could fight them. I would fight them, but I wasn't ready to lose my grandson. Not yet. Still, for the first time in a long time, I had a plan. And more importantly, I had someone in my corner who knew exactly how this game was played. Renee printed the plan and slid it across the desk like a war map. 3 tracks, she said. Asset protection, documentation, and exposure. We run all 3 quietly until you're ready for confrontation. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't theatrical. It was cold, clean, and brilliant. We started with the deed. My name was still on it, but Renee had her team pull the title history. That's when we found it. An inquiry dated 5 months ago, submitted by a notary Jessica once tagged on Instagram. She had tried to transfer partial ownership of my home, using a springing power of attorney Liam had access to. Signed, stamped, filed, but incomplete. She wasn't dumb, just impatient. The process hadn't gone through because one document hadn't been verified. Yet. That yet made my blood run cold. Next, we turned to the evidence trail. Renee gave me homework. Compare utility bills to retreat dates. Screenshot Jessica's online branding, especially where she called my house a legacy estate. Gather mail with her name on it. Record any conversations that hinted at entitlement, pressure, or coercion. She even ordered me a voice-activated pin. You're not confronting her? She warned. You're building a file. Think of it like a forensic audit, just like old times. That made me smile. Old times, when I wore suits and cornered fraudsters in conference rooms, when my signature meant power. I missed that version of me. But she wasn't gone, just waiting. The third piece? Exposure prep. Renee called it, quote, controlled leverage. We don't blow it open yet, she said, but we make it very clear that we're watching. We plant fear without giving them a target. How? Simple things. A cease and desist letter to Jessica's brand email, unsigned. An anonymous inquiry to the HOA about commercial use of a residential property. A friend of mine who runs a blog for local businesswomen, she's going to request an interview with Claire Maxwell, the woman behind Maplewood Wellness. I nearly choked on my tea. Oh, and this, she added, sliding over a copy of a fake invitation. Your name, your address, your photo, all used for her yoga promotions. That's grounds for a personal branding claim. I stared at the paper. She was using me like a mascot. A relic. Claire Maxwell's home. Claire Maxwell's spirit. Claire Maxwell's blessing. All without my consent. Renee looked at me, serious now. You're not just a victim, Claire. You're an asset they think they've acquired. I leaned back, a slow burn building behind my ribs. No more quiet. No more guilt. I wasn't their asset. I was their reckoning. The first hard piece of evidence came wrapped in a lie. I was doing a routine check on my old business card, the one I kept open for emergency travel or big house repairs. I hadn't used it in months. But when the monthly statement hit my inbox, one line caught my eye. $1,235. Urban Earth Retreats, categorized as health and wellness. I sat there, blinking at the screen, my tea going cold beside me. That name, Jessica's Business, filed under my account. I opened the details. The charge was tied to a vendor invoice Jessica had submitted for a yoga retreat in Sedona, scheduled, marketed, and paid for under my name. It wasn't just shady, it was bold. I clicked through the attachment she'd linked to the charge, a promotional flyer, supposedly for a community elder care weekend. At the top, Claire's legacy project, reclaiming rest through wellness. My name, my address, my house. I felt like I'd been punched. I wasn't just footing the bill. I was being marketed as the spiritual face of her brand, the wise elder, the quiet blessing in the background. Except I'd never consented to any of it. I printed the documents and emailed them to Renee. She called 5 minutes later. She's not just stealing, she said. She's laundering your identity. I didn't speak. I couldn't. The heat in my chest had turned to something colder, heavier. Renee continued, her voice calm but firm. She's using you to qualify her retreat spaces as elder-aligned initiatives that might give her tax breaks, grant eligibility, even brand equity in the wellness market. Tax breaks. Under my name, with my house as the bait. I opened Instagram again, my fingers trembling. I searched for the post I remembered from summer, the one where Jamie had accidentally wandered into the background during one of her yoga reels. There it was. Caption, our sweet family retreat home, passed down through generations of women reclaiming peace. So grateful to hold space here with Claire Maxwell's blessing. I wasn't a person to her. I was a narrative, the former forensic accountant, the gracious old matriarch, the legacy. But legacies don't pay bills. Legacies don't co-sign on credit cards. Legacies don't pick up after someone else's toddler while their mother films 5 hours of yoga videos and calls it work. I closed the app and walked to the kitchen, poured out my cold tea, stared at the photo of me and Jamie on the fridge, back when things still felt real. Then I pulled out a legal pad. Top of the page, Urban Earth fraud charges. I was done reacting. It was time to investigate. I didn't sleep much that night. Old instincts had kicked in. Not fear, not even anger. Precision. The same quiet intensity I used to bring into conference rooms with six-figure settlements on the line. By dawn, my kitchen looked like an operations center. 3 folders open. Laptop logged into my old forensic software account. Highlighters, notepads, sticky tabs, all color-coded. Jessica thought I'd forgotten who I was. She had no idea who she was dealing with. First, I pulled utility records for the last 6 months. Water, gas, electric. Then I overlaid them with the timestamps on Jessica's Maplewood retreat videos and posts. I noted every spike in usage, every weekend the guest room was mysteriously unavailable, and every glowing testimonial from a client tagged in front of my house. Then I pulled guest reviews, screenshots from Yelp, TripAdvisor, even her own newsletter. Claire's hospitality was the warm hug I didn't know I needed. Her presence grounds the energy of the space. I hope I can age with the grace she brings to this retreat. She was selling me like a product. Next, I started image matching. Every digital flyer, banner, or yoga retreat promo that included a blurred background of my property got saved, printed, and timestamped. Even the ones where only the porch light or stained glass window peeked through. Evidence of commercial use, unpermitted, unreported, illegal. By noon, my table was stacked. Renee came by that afternoon, and when I opened the door, she took one look and grinned. "Well, damn," she said, setting down her briefcase. "The hawk still flies." She sat with me and flipped through the evidence. After 20 minutes, she pushed back from the table, hands steepled under her chin. "She's not just sloppy. She's confident." "Yes," I said, "because she thinks I'm too old and too grateful to say anything." Renee nodded. "Which means she'll escalate soon. We need to be ready when she overreaches." "Oh, she will," I said. "I've seen this arc 100 times." That night, I walked through my own house like a stranger, touching door frames, picture ledges, the banister Liam never fixed. Every room had been slowly repurposed for their business, their comfort, their control. But in my study, nothing had changed. My books, my files, my history. That's where I stored the backup thumb drive, the one I hadn't touched since retirement. It held templates for property audits, fraud affidavits, sworn statements. The same tools I used to take down men in suits, far more dangerous than Jessica, with her ring light and lemon water. I plugged it in, backed it all up. I wasn't just building a case. I was reclaiming my damn house, one screenshot at a time. It always happens this way. When people like Jessica sense a shift, when control starts slipping through their fingers, they change tactics, from dominance to charm. That night, she knocked on my bedroom door holding 2 cups of tea, chamomile, the brand I like. She hadn't brought me tea in months. "Can we talk?" she said, voice soft, eyes damp. I let her in. She sat on the edge of the bed like it was a therapy couch and sighed heavily, as if the weight of the world had settled on her thin little shoulders. "Mom," she began, "I know I've been difficult." I said nothing, just sipped the tea I had no intention of drinking. She clasped her hands together, nervously, like she was auditioning for guilt. "I've been hard on you. I see that now. I think I was afraid to admit how much I need you, not just the house. You." There it was, the pivot, the almost apology wrapped around a request. "I was thinking," she said, turning toward me, "maybe we could do something together. Like co-sign on a little side property? Something nearby. I've been researching these tiny retreat cabins, a space where I could really build something for my family." I let her finish. "You don't need this big house forever," she added gently. "But I do." She took my hand, and for a split second, I saw the girl Liam had married, the version of her I used to want to believe in. But it was an illusion, a costume. I knew better. Still, I played along. "That's an interesting idea," I said, squeezing her hand back. "Let's talk about it soon." She smiled, relieved, and left the tea on my nightstand like a gift. The next morning, I called Renee, told her exactly what happened. By noon, she had a contact in records down at the county assessor's office, pulling property transfer attempts connected to my name. She sent me a scanned document 3 hours later. Jessica had already tried. 5 months ago. Using the springing power of attorney Liam claimed they'd lost. It was all there. My forged signature, notarized by a woman who also happened to be listed as a guest on one of Jessica's retreats. The form attempted to transfer 50% interest in my property to a new LLC, Earth and Family Wellness Spaces. I stared at it for a long time. She hadn't come to ask for trust. She'd come to see if I'd found out, and now I had. The fake warmth, the offer of a side project, the tea, all of it was cover, delay, manipulation. I set the teacup in the sink and watched the herbal remnants swirl down the drain. Jessica was escalating. But now? So was I. I waited until Jessica was gone. She'd left early that morning to host a healing circle at a boutique spa upstate. Another one of her networking scams dressed up in crystals and jargon. Liam was in the den, pretending to work. I walked in, sat across from him, and placed a single sheet of paper on the coffee table between us. The deed transfer form, the one with my forged signature. His face didn't change much, just a brief flicker, like a curtain blowing open and snapping shut again. I found this, I said, dated 5 months ago. Jessica's name is on it, so is mine. Or, I should say, someone's version of mine. He leaned back in the recliner. Didn't even blink. Jessica's stressed, he said finally. She thought she was helping. I let the silence stretch. She thought forging my signature on a transfer of property was helping? He exhaled, scrubbed his face with both hands. Look, this was supposed to be temporary, Claire. None of this was supposed to get hostile. You mean legal? He looked at me now, really looked. Jessica's building something here, he said. A brand, a future. You make her feel small, like you're just waiting for her to fail. I leaned forward, calm. You don't need to explain it again, Liam. I heard it the first time. He tilted his head, confused, and then I pressed the little button on the pen sitting on the armrest beside me. A soft beep. Recording saved. His face went pale. You recorded me? I stood. You've both been using me, using this house, using my name, my accounts, my silence. You've called it help, family, legacy. But what you've built here isn't a home, it's theft. His mouth opened, closed. This conversation, I said, will be documented, along with every other piece of evidence I've gathered. Still, he didn't move. He just looked tired, worn out by the mask slipping. You're making this ugly, he muttered. No, I said. You did that 5 months ago, when you let her sign my name behind my back. I left the room, locked my study door behind me. Then I uploaded the recording to the secure cloud Renee had set up for me, labeled it 10A, Liam confirms POA knowledge. It wasn't the first time he let Jessica take the wheel, but now, legally, it would be the last time he did it without consequence. Let them cry family later. This was business now, and in business I never lost. The mediation meeting took place in a beige office suite downtown. Bland furniture. Too much artificial light. One of those rooms designed to make everyone feel neutral. Jessica arrived in full costume. Soft cardigan, minimal makeup, delicate little silver necklace with a lotus charm. Her lawyer, a young man who looked like he still lived off frozen burritos, carried a thick folder and that smug expression that always comes with fabricated confidence. Renee was already there when I walked in, calm, composed. Her presence turned the air solid. Jessica stood and gave me a fake smile. Mom, she said gently, thank you for coming. I know how overwhelming all of this must feel for you. I didn't answer, just sat down and folded my hands in my lap. The mediator began with his speech, neutrality, fairness, time constraints. I barely heard it. Then Jessica's lawyer slid a folder across the table. In light of Mrs. Maxwell's health concerns and the increasing instability of her memory and finances, he began. Our clients are seeking a temporary conservatorship over the estate. This will allow for smoother transitions, bill management, and future property planning. I watched the words land, carefully rehearsed, legally laced. Jessica folded her hands like a saint. She didn't want to burden anyone, she added softly. But it's been getting worse. I only stepped in because she started missing payments and forgetting names. Interesting, Renee said, opening her own folder. Because according to these statements, Claire hasn't missed a payment in over 2 years. In fact, she paid your business expenses last quarter. Jessica's jaw tightened. Then her lawyer pulled out the forged power of attorney. This document, he said, demonstrates Claire's prior intent to allow her son to manage her affairs should her capacity decline. That threshold has been met. Renee smiled faintly. It's a pity that document is fraudulent. She didn't raise her voice. She just laid out the timeline, the date it was backdated, the notary's conflict of interest, and the supporting evidence. My signature mismatched from known samples. Jessica turned up the drama. Her voice caught. Tears welled up. I didn't want to hurt her. I just wanted to help her transition into the next phase. The performance was almost perfect. Almost. Because then Renee pulled out the final piece. The recording of Liam confirming they both knew what they were doing. She didn't play it yet. Just said, we have audio confirmation that both parties were aware the POA was being used without consent. The room went quiet. Jessica blinked, fast and furious. Her lawyer started backpedaling, and for the first time since they'd moved in, I saw fear crawl across her face. We hadn't won yet, but we'd cracked her mask. And that was the beginning of the end. That night, I sat in the dark kitchen, Jamie's crayon drawing still hanging on the fridge, a stick figure version of us both, him with wild orange hair, me with a square purse, and a sun hat. Underneath it, in uneven letters, me plus Nana Claire equals my favorite team. And suddenly, my hands were shaking. I'd spent the last 10 days operating like a machine, collecting evidence, documenting fraud, preparing for war. But in that quiet moment, I wondered if I had gone too far. Not legally, I had every right, but emotionally. Had I lost her completely? Had I failed her, not as a landlord or a guardian of assets, but as a mother? Had I let this house, this pride, this name, mean more than the girl I once hoped would be family? I made myself a cup of tea, real chamomile this time, and sat in the silence. I remembered holding Jamie the first night they moved in. Jessica had been sobbing in the guest room. Liam was pacing the hallway, panicking about the move. And there I was, rocking that boy, singing the lullaby I used to hum to Liam when he had night terrors. She had looked at me that night with real gratitude in her eyes. Had I imagined it? Was all of it fake? Or had something between us changed slowly, like water turning to ice, without either of us noticing? I kept asking questions I had no answer for. That's when I remembered her words. Not the ones from the mediation, not the fake concern, the ones she said over my dinner table. In front of Linda, in front of Jamie, you've been more of a mother to me than she ever was. That was the truth. That wasn't for court or show. That was the knife she twisted while thinking I'd just absorb it like always. And still, I felt the sting of it, because part of me had wanted to be that mother to her. To believe she saw me that way, to believe I could still matter to someone the way I used to. But that line? That wasn't said in love. It was said to humiliate, to reposition me in my own home. And that was the moment something inside me changed. Not out of pride, but out of clarity. She didn't want a mother. She wanted a mascot. And I would not be paraded 1 minute and discarded the next. I looked at Jamie's drawing again. He was the only one in that house who saw me for who I truly was. And now, I had to fight for that version of myself. For him and for me. 2 days after mediation, I sent out the invitations. Just a little gathering at the Maplewood Women's Guild, a legacy group where I'd once served as treasurer for 11 years, back when people still used envelopes and stamps. Jessica liked to parade her wellness brand there, claimed she was bringing, quote, youthful innovation to a sleepy suburban network. They gave her a platform. Now they were going to hear the truth. I booked the event under my name, Claire Maxwell, retired forensic analyst, speaking on interpersonal financial manipulation in family-owned spaces. The title was neutral. The tone wasn't. Word spread faster than I expected. Retired judges, business owners, a few clergy members, all RSVP'd. A couple of Jessica's investors were on the list too. She had no idea. I didn't tell Renee until the day before. She didn't try to stop me. "Are you ready for this?" she asked. I was. Not because I wanted spectacle, but because I needed truth. Public, recorded, undeniable truth. The night of the talk, I wore a navy blue suit with clean lines. No pearls. No apology. Jessica walked in halfway through the cookies and tea. She saw the banner. She saw the slideshow on the projector. And she froze. I walked up to the podium and cleared my throat. "Good evening," I said. "Tonight I want to talk about what happens when family trust becomes a business plan and how elder identity can be turned into marketing currency. No names. Not yet. But the images said enough. My house and her flyers. My name on her retreats. Her guests posing on my porch." Then I clicked to the next slide. Bank statements. Utility spikes. Promotional reviews using my full name as the host. Gasps in the room. Whispers. Jessica stood in the back, face pale, fingers tight on her purse strap. She stepped forward. "This is harassment," she said, loud enough for the room. "She's not well. She's confused. That's when Renee entered from the side, slow and deliberate, heels echoing across the hardwood floor. "I have a notarized log of every transaction Claire documented," she said calmly. "We also have a digital recording of your husband confirming your joint use of a fraudulent power of attorney." You could hear the breath leave Jessica's lungs. The room shifted. Sympathy vanished. A retired judge near the front whispered something to the woman beside him. "That's attempted elder financial abuse." Jessica tried to laugh. "This is a setup. You're turning people against me." "You turned them," I said, steady. "I just brought the receipts." She didn't storm out. She fled. And for the first time in nearly a year, I stood in my town, my community, and watched them see me not as someone's grandmother, not as a doormat, but as Claire Maxwell again, the woman who sees everything and forgets nothing. Jessica didn't go quiet after the guild meeting. She just got louder in smaller rooms. The next morning, she launched a smear campaign the size of her ego. Told anyone who listened that I was losing it, that the speech was a confused outburst from a lonely woman with compromised faculties. "She's spiraling," she whispered to the guild president. "She needs supervision," she texted to two of her yoga investors. What she didn't realize was that one of those investors was now forwarding me every word. By noon, the Women's Guild issued a formal statement. "We stand with Claire Maxwell, whose contributions to Maplewood's legacy are unmatched and whose integrity remains unimpeachable." Jessica didn't see that coming. Neither did Liam. Because that same afternoon, Renee filed our first official move, a cease and desist against Urban Earth Retreats for unauthorized use of my name, likeness, and residential address in marketing. The letter was short and lethal. It included digital screenshots of all promotional materials, copies of statements Jessica billed to my accounts, a warning that continued use would result in a defamation and fraud suit. By 3 p.m., her Square payment system was frozen. By 5, her merchant accounts were under review. By 6:17, her Maplewood Wellness Weekend event listing disappeared from Eventbrite. She tried calling me. I let it ring. Let her sit in the silence of losing something she thought was hers. That night, Liam knocked on my bedroom door. No charm, no excuses. "Can we talk?" I didn't answer. I didn't even turn the knob because I finally understood what power felt like again. Not anger, not revenge. Control. Control of my time, my name, my space. He slid a note under the door. It said, "We never meant for it to go this far. Jamie doesn't understand what's happening. Please, let's find a way to fix this. For him." I picked up the paper, folded it neatly, and filed it under Evidence Emotional Appeals, because now they were scared. Jessica had made herself look polished, spiritual, modern. But now? She looked desperate. Even Linda, her forever ally, her real mother, had gone quiet. Word got around faster than judgment in this town, and Maplewood didn't like fraud, not when it wore yoga pants and fake empathy. The cracks were spreading, not just legally, publicly, socially. And I hadn't even pressed charges yet. That was the beauty of it. They thought they'd burned me out. But all they did was light a match under their own little empire. I wasn't vindictive. I was thorough. Thank you for listening to the end. I'm truly grateful for your time. Why is it so hard for older people to set boundaries when the harm comes from family? Let me know in the comments.